Hello everyone. I share real stories that I know and I'm sure you will like them. Enjoy watching and don't forget to like.
I invited the electrician inside because the lights kept flickering. I didn't know he'd find the one wire my husband never dared to touch me. My name is Colleen. I'm 48 and I live in a house where time feels like it stopped ticking 10 years ago. We have a grandfather clock in the hallway that hasn't chimed since 2012, and somehow that feels symbolic. My husband Graham and I bought this house when our second child was born. Back then, the grass was always freshly cut and the shutters gleamed with new paint. Now the lawn gets mowed when the neighbors complain, and the shutters are faded like an old wedding dress stored too long in the attic. Graham works in insurance. He wears a Bluetooth headset even at dinner, and sometimes I think he talks to it more than to me. We haven't had a real conversation since our youngest left for college. We communicate in size and calendar reminders. I make lists. That's how I cope. To-do lists, grocery lists, things that need fixing lists. But there's one list I never write down, though it's always in my mind. Ways I've disappeared. Every room in this house holds a version of me. The woman I used to be when I had purpose. When I was touched not out of obligation, but out of want. That morning, the light above the sink began to flicker. Not constantly, just enough to make me notice. It was one of those small irritations that eats at you until you either fix it or scream. And since screaming wasn't on my calendar, I called the number on the magnet stuck to the fridge, Pine County Electrical Services. Reliable. Fast. Fair. I didn't expect him to answer. And I certainly didn't expect him to show up the same day. He arrived at exactly 10:12 a.m. I remember because I was still in my robe. Not one of those elegant silk ones you see in perfume commercials. Mine was fleece. Faded. A little frayed at the sleeves. But it was soft. Familiar. I heard the truck door slam and looked through the kitchen window. The sky was clouded, and a fine mist dusted the driveway. He stepped out of the van like he had nowhere to be but here. Dane. That was his name. It suited him. He was taller than I expected. Not gym muscle tall, real tall. Like someone who lifted more than his own weight for a living. His jeans were work-worn. His shirt clung to his shoulders in a way that made me suddenly aware of my unbrushed hair and slippered feet. He looked at me with calm, observant eyes. The kind of eyes that notice things without making you feel naked. "Mrs. Cole?" he asked. I hated the sound of it. It made me feel like a form to be signed. I smiled without thinking. "Colleen's fine. Come in." He paused before stepping inside. Wiped his boots on the mat. Then took them off completely. That struck me. Most workers don't do that. Graham would have barked something about dirt, but Dane, he just knew. Like he respected the space even before understanding it. He glanced around briefly, taking in the living room, the mantle, the photo of my family, the one taken at the beach 5 years ago when I still wore my hair in waves and Graham still smiled with his eyes. "The light over the sink?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, turning to lead him in. I was hyper-aware of the space between us as he followed. The soft tread of his socked feet, the faint smell of soap and metal. My robe brushed against the back of my knees, and for a moment, I wondered if I should have changed. Or brushed my teeth. The kitchen felt warmer with him in it. Not from the heat, but from something I couldn't place. Like energy humming low through the walls. He moved with focus. Pulled a small flashlight from his tool belt and examined the fixture. His fingers worked quickly but gently, like he didn't want to startle the house. "Loose wiring. Common in older homes," he said. "You ever had anyone look at the panel downstairs?" Graham was going to, but I stopped myself. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to speak my husband's name again so soon. It felt like bad luck. Dane just nodded, like he understood more than I said. Like he'd heard that pause before. He spent a long time checking the panel in the basement. I made tea. I didn't know if he drank tea, but it gave my hands something to do. When he came back up, his sleeves were rolled and his forearms were lightly smudged. He looked like something out of a movie I wouldn't let myself watch. "It's not dangerous," he said, accepting the cup I offered him. "But the panel's original. I could clean it up, replace a few breakers, maybe run a new line to the kitchen. Would that help with the flickering?" He smiled. Not a wide smile. Just enough. Sometimes old wires just need new connections. I looked away too quickly. My cheeks burned. "I'll write you up an estimate," he added. "Please do." He pulled a small tablet from his bag and stood at the counter, typing with the tip of a stylus. I leaned in, curious. His handwriting was neat, precise. The lines of his fingers moved slow, steady. There was no rush in him. No hurry to leave. "Do you always work alone?" I asked. He looked up. Our eyes met. "Mostly. It's quieter." I nodded like I understood, even though something in me wanted the quiet broken. He handed me the tablet. I signed. Our fingers brushed. It wasn't the kind of touch you write about. It was nothing. And everything. A brush of heat, the weight of unspoken things. "I can come back Friday morning to start," he said. "I'll be here," I replied, maybe too quickly. He paused at the door, looked at the mantel again. "You have a nice home," he said. I smiled, but it felt fragile. "Thank you." When he left, the house felt emptier than before he'd arrived. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling while Graham snored softly beside me. I kept thinking about wires, about connections, about what sparks without permission. Friday came fast. I put on real clothes this time, washed my hair, lip gloss. He arrived at 9:58 a.m. "Early. Didn't want to keep you waiting," he said with a smile. I laughed too loudly. He sat up quickly, quietly. We barely spoke for the first hour, but every now and then, our eyes would catch and linger. At one point, I brought him water. His hand covered mine as he took the glass. I didn't move. Neither did he. Then, without a word, he let go. Later, he was on a ladder near the hallway. I walked past him to grab something from the linen closet. As I turned, my robe, yes, that same robe, I'd worn it again over my clothes, brushed against his arm. He looked down at me, and I looked up at him. There was silence, but it wasn't empty. I took a breath. He did too. He stepped down. Slowly, deliberately. We stood inches apart. And then, a pop from the panel downstairs. A breaker flipped. The kitchen light went dark. We both jumped slightly. Laughed. "Guess I still have work to do," he said. I nodded. But when he turned to go back downstairs, I watched him. And I knew. We hadn't crossed the line yet. But we were standing on the edge. The house was quiet after he left. Not peaceful, just still. The way a theater feels after the last curtain falls. I walked into the kitchen, barefoot, trailing my fingers along the edge of the counter where his hand had just rested. There was a faint smell of copper and sawdust and something else I couldn't name, something that made my skin warm. I poured myself a glass of wine, even though it was just past noon. The rules of the day didn't apply anymore. Graham called that night. He was at a hotel upstate for a conference. Told me the meetings were dull, that the minibar was overpriced. I laughed at the right moments, made small talk. But the whole time, I could still feel the heat from Dane's eyes on my skin. When I climbed into bed, the sheets were cold. But in my mind, I was still standing near the breaker panel, watching him work. His shirt had clung to his back as he crouched, his brow furrowed in concentration. I pressed my hand against my chest. It beat faster than I wanted to admit. The next morning, he was back. On time. Professional. As if nothing had passed between us. But everything had changed. He worked in the living room this time, rewiring a faulty outlet behind the bookshelf. I pretended to dust, to vacuum, to clean things that didn't need cleaning. I just wanted to stay near him. And he let me. We spoke little. When we did, it was simple things. Small jokes. Glances that lasted a breath too long. Once, I asked if he wanted a break, and he said, "Only if you do." At one point, I bent to pick something up and lost my balance slightly. He caught my elbow, studied me. His grip was firm, comforting, too familiar. And I didn't pull away. We sat on the back porch for lunch. I made sandwiches. He took one bite and said, "No one's made me lunch in years." I smiled. No one's eaten mine in years. It was a joke. But not really. He looked at me then. Really looked. And I felt it again, that silent, dangerous understanding. We didn't touch. Not then. But the space between us hummed like a live wire. When he left that day, I stood at the door a little too long. Watched his van pull away until it turned the corner. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about his hands, his voice, the way he saw me as I hadn't been seen in years. And I knew what I wanted. The next morning, I invited him inside without pretense. No work order. No broken fixture. Just coffee. He stood in my kitchen with his tool bag at his feet, unsure. "We shouldn't," he said. "We won't," I replied. But I didn't move. Neither did he. Something passed between us. Not a kiss. Not even a touch. Just an agreement. That we would both pretend. Pretend we didn't feel this. Pretend this wasn't already happening. He stayed for an hour. We didn't speak much. But I made mistakes. Not love. It was 2 weeks before everything fell apart. Graham came home from another trip and asked me why the breaker box was cleaner. I told him I had it looked at, that we had a short. He didn't question it. But 2 nights later, while we were watching TV, he paused the screen. "Colleen, who's Dane?" My stomach dropped. "What?" "You sent a payment to Pine County Electrical." I saw it on the bank statement, but I don't see an invoice. I fumbled, lied. I must have thrown it out. "He fixed the lights." Graham nodded, but his eyes didn't leave mine. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. And Dane didn't show up that day, or the next. On the 3rd day, I got a call. From Graham. "You left your robe in the laundry room," he said. His voice was ice. Smelled like sweat and sawdust. Funny. I don't remember doing any work down there. He hung up. When I came home that evening, the bedroom closet was empty on his side. The drawers were pulled open, clean. There was no note, just a silence that screamed. I haven't seen Dane since. And Graham, he never came back. He left the robe on the bed, folded, and the wedding ring beside it. No words, just metal and fabric. The lights don't flicker anymore. But neither do I. The last thing Graham said to me in person was this: "If something breaks, Colleen, you fix it. You don't replace it." But I did. And now I'm alone. I thought the electrician had rewired the house. Turns out, he rewired me.